I'm one of the many people who didn't know about Kid Icarus until Pit joined Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and his appearance was striking to me. I think subconsciously I get drawn in by the concept of angels, which probably has to do with my background as a Catholic. They show up in the Bible quite a bit, and my grandma had a large collection of angel statues in her house that I'd see almost daily, so my interest in Kid Icarus kinda makes sense. And luckily for me at the time, Kid Icarus was available on the Wii shopping channel for $5, so of course I was gonna buy it. And wouldn't you know it, but I hated the game. There's a reason why Nintendo Hard is a term thrown around about NES games, but I couldn't even beat the first level. The controls were awkward, enemies were rampant, health was low, and dying was extremely easy. So I left the game, never eager to return, until Kid Icarus Uprising released on the Nintendo 3DS. And that shit was heat! I'll save my commentary for that game when I inevitably review it 25 years from now, but it rekindled my interest in Kid Icarus on NES, and it just so happened that a port of the game was released on the 3DS with a 3D Classics moniker. It had updated backgrounds which made the game look super crisp, and it let the 3D effect really stand out. But most important was that it featured save states, which meant I could save halfway through a level, so if I died, I didn't have to worry about replaying the first minute over and over and over again. So today, I'm still using save states. Yeah, the third level can kiss my ass, and I'll be using the NES Classic for the occasion. This thing's been collecting dust since it came out, and considering how difficult it was to get MSRP, I gotta give it some power. And I don't know if it's a hardware issue, but this thing likes to crash whenever I record with it, which only makes me want to use save states more. So without further ado, here's Kid Icarus for NES. The plot, in accordance with the scriptures, is that there was a place called Angel Land that was ruled by two goddesses, Medusa and Palutena. You might as well call it Hot Chick Heaven, because there's such a mess of beautiful and tough women that will make you love the franchise even more. Especially Palutena, ooh! You'll never forget a little bouquet like Palutena. She bad, her hair is green colored, and she's the size of an average human mother. You know, I got two Palutena amiibo, one in the box and one in the jar. Anyways, Medusa woke up one day and chose violence, and just started burning shit and turning everyone into statues. So Wifey banished her to the Underworld and turned her into a hideous monster. That's my catty bitch. So Medusa decides, I don't need you, and she builds an army in the Underworld and rolls up to Angel Land to continue her petrification and arson shenanigans. She takes some prisoners, cause why not, then locks up my fucking wife in the Sky Palace. Bitch. But she made one mistake, and now is sparing and imprisoning the Angel Pit, who was in charge of Palutena's personal bodyguards. Look, I get it, they knew each other before, and Medusa thought it would be satisfying if the Wonderkin suffered for however long angels live for. Uh-oh. I call it a mistake because Pit escapes. Also, Palutena somehow bestows him a bow and arrow while she's in prison, and I'd call that some Deus Ex Machina BS, but, well, you know. So that brings us right into the game, in medias res. So grab yourself a snack and a glass of orange juice, cause here we go! We're Pit now, he's got the bow, and despite having wings, he can't fly. If only we could see him take wing. I said before the controls were awkward, and maybe it's just a relic of the Wii version, because the controls on the NES Classic are much more snappy. A section like this won't make me anxious anymore. The bigger standout right away is that levels are vertical, which even today is a rarity, but since we're trying to climb out of the Underworld, it makes sense. That's one of the features that makes this game compelling to try out. I especially like how the game has a wrapping screen and utilizes it in its levels. It makes me want to see how the game would look displayed on like a three-dimensional tube where Pit's location on the screen is always centered. There is one thing holding back this vertical format though, and that's the scroll stop. As you climb, any platforms below you that go off screen will unload, creating a death pit at all times. Considering this game has a lengthy collection of platforming areas, you're expected to miss a jump a few times, meaning you'll have to replay the level from the beginning. Combine this with the slippery controls of the Wii version, and it's easy to see why I didn't like this game. And you know what else can drive someone to depression? How about placing as many enemies on screen as the hardware can allow all the time? Oh my god, and a lot of monsters spawn in groups of 4, which either halts all your momentum or completely completely overwhelms you. Every level has sections where flying monsters will keep spawning, and their AI is super unpredictable. And even if you try and kill them all, another quartet spawns instantly once their hearts despawn. And that's something you've probably noticed. When monsters die, their hearts are left behind, which is morbid and currency. Levels feature shops where you can spend these hearts, which I'll get into later, but what's going to impact your experience with the game more is that Kid Icarus has 5 endings, which are determined by fulfilling certain criteria, and having 999 hearts by the end of the game is one of them. I recommend not going for the best ending because some of the requirements are just absurd to accomplish, especially without save states. One of which is to max out your attack stat, which can only happen if you've passed specific milestones on a hidden experience stat the game has. Throughout your adventure, there's 5 rooms where Zeus can gift you with an arrow of strength to boost your attack, but if your experience is too low, you'll miss out on the buff and the best ending. And as you might have guessed, experience is gained by defeating monsters, and collecting their hearts bumps it up too. Considering the game hands out monsters like a good Christian donates to their church, collecting a few arrows of strength isn't difficult, but you need to remember that filling up your experience and then dying before clearing a level undoes all your efforts. So when I've died on the same level 19 times, all I want to do is clear the damn thing, so the experience I've collected is going to be significantly less than if I meticulously make a save state every time I kill a monster without getting hit. One of the easier tasks for the best ending, which will happen as you grind enemies, is to max out your health. I said the game has an experience bar, but there's also a score being tracked that will reward you with health upgrades if a hidden milestone is passed and a level is completed. The health upgrades are great. It's just too bad the game's difficulty doesn't scale up with it, so the game actually lowers in difficulty the closer you get to the end. What also makes the game easier are power-ups you can earn by surviving training chambers, which pits you against a gauntlet of falling monoliths. The caveat, of course, is that you can die here, but the power-ups are pretty useful if you're willing to risk it. The more basic upgrades are the Sacred Bow, which increases your range and attack speed, and the Fire Arrow, which widens your arrow's hurt box. But the best power-up is the Protective Crystal, which gives Pit a shield that isn't the most effective, but it has its own hurt boxes, so you can play much more freely. If you can get all 3 of these by the time you battle Medusa, you'll be one step closer to seeing the best ending. But the game found a way to ruin this too by having a monster that can steal the power-ups if it touches you. They can be repurchased at shops. Or you can use a save state. They should have called this game Get Good, Kid Icarus, since it asks for the moon if you want that sweet, sweet best ending. So I've talked the talk, now let's walk the walk. Just how difficult is Kid Icarus? Well, the first level isn't too bad. You mainly deal with a den of Joe Blakes that slowly approach you from the sky, and then mono eyes appear once the map opens up a bit more. After that, there's a split in the path, which is pretty cool, and then you get to see what real pain is. The Reaper might be the most notorious thing about Kid Icarus. It's a monster that often sits on a small platform bobbing back and forth, and if it sees you, it summons more flying enemies. Great. Getting in the Reaper's line of sight is inevitable, yet I keep insisting on killing the scoundrel instead of taking the hit and going on my merry way to save wifey. Probably the most frustrating thing about these guys is when I'm speeding through a level on my 77th attempt, and then the Reaper clips through the floor, so I get to deal with it on a worse platform. And besides the Reapers, level 1 isn't too bad. There's this precise platforming section that separates the boys from the men, and a few monsters at the end whose sole existence is to be shysters, but this isn't a level that makes me want to kick a wall in rage, so I guess that's a compliment. The second level is pretty similar, but adds ice physics because hell hath frozen over, and you gotta love that input delay it creates. These squid enemies are also introduced, who spawn from below before going monkey style all across the screen. Having them spawn from that direction pressures you to speed up since you can't shoot below yourself, and with the ice input delay, you can die a lot here. Level 3. Whoever designed this is on a list somewhere. It's too long, has too many monsters, and throws in obstacles like lava and spiky walls that can hurt you on contact. I was too hyper-focused on getting the best ending that I didn't realize dying reset my health, so for no reason I played the entire game with health so low that anything could instantly kill me. So don't be surprised to see my health this low for most of the video, but even with full health, this level is impossible. There's a couple items you'll find to ease the difficulty, like this chalice that refills some of your health, and this harp that turns monsters into mallets, but level 3 has no chalice, and the harp is placed right when you have enemies up your ass, and it requires a risky low jump to collect. But if you do miss it, you're as good as dead anyways, so you might as well take the risk. Something else I haven't mentioned are the bonus rooms in most levels. Besides the rooms to acquire power-ups and attack buffs, a lot of the doorways you'll pass are monster nests. It may look overwhelming, but they all fly in a pattern, so once you defeat 2, there should be a safe zone to stand in and pick off the rest. The other bonus room is this press your luck type minigame where you can collect hearts and mallets for free. The good news is that these rooms are 100% safe. The bad news is that it's a waste of time. Try this question on for size. In what levels does Pit fight bosses and wield a powerful hammer? Why, it's the fortresses, of course! Every 4th level in the game takes place in a labyrinth where the goal is to find the boss hidden inside. Instead of climbing up, you're now traveling from room to room in a maze of identical looking rooms that is really easy to get lost in. And since I'm still on the topic, let's talk about the special rooms you'll come across. First is the shop. I waited till now to mention these because there's a few items exclusive to fortresses. While wandering around, you might find a map, which primarily acts as toilet paper unless you purchase a pencil to start marking where you've been on it. And if you somehow can't figure out where you are, the torch will tell you which square you're in. Items you can buy in any level include the Bottle of Life, which revives your health a bit if you die. The barrel lets you hold more than one bottle, which I personally think is a scam. Like, where are you getting those hearts? If you want an instant health fill up, you can buy chalices, and if you suck at platforming, you can buy an angel feather to take wing when you fall into a pit. Last are mallets. All around the fortresses are petrified Centurion soldiers. As far as I know, hitting a rock with a hammer breaks it, and that probably explains why doing this is useless. I mean, they'll help you out during the boss fight, but I'd be lying if I said saving them isn't a waste of energy. I'd be great in a crisis. I will recommend having a few mallets on standby though, since some rooms are blocked by a statue's presence. The other special rooms in fortresses are hot springs, which will heal all your health and are honestly the game's saving grace. They'll appear a few times in the other levels, but not enough to make this a good game. The last room is a hospital. Besides the Reapers, eggplant wizards also have their own special place in hell because they shoot projectiles that turn you into an eggplant. You can't use your bow in this state, so you have to find a hospital to return to normal. But I don't know why you'd ever want to do that. So waiting at the end of the fortress is Twin Bellows. They're naughty boys, and as expected, the fight is not good. Okay, first of all, the Centurions I saved won't even fly low enough to hit it, so they get clout before being even remotely useful. And then the layout of the room might as well be empty, because there's no reason to use the platforms. Like, I'm pretty sure the best strategy is to keep shooting and hope you don't die first. But our reward is a sacred treasure, which is a tool that'll get used in the final level. Look, the game's normal now. Yeah, there's a reason why most games from this era are side-scrollers, and it's because it works. The next 3 levels all take place in the overworld, and gameplay-wise, there isn't much new content from this point on. New enemies will appear, but they're very similar to the enemies from the Underworld, so because of this, the game actually tones down in difficulty. You're still probably gonna fall into a pit or run out of health, but by this point you've probably gotten a health upgrade, so the game feels so much easier. And for whatever reason, I was still trying to preserve the deathless run with save states, but I imagine that I'd clear the levels even faster if I wasn't trying to stealth my way through every obstacle. The next fortress, on the other hand, bumps up the difficulty, but that's only because it's bigger than the last one. I didn't mention this before, but any power-ups you received from Zeus will be disabled in dungeons, probably to make the boss fight more challenging. And this time we get to fight Hydra. I actually like this fight. It might be the most balanced thing in the game. Hydra will jump out of the lava in a fixed pattern, and the platforms are just the right size to make you second guess your spacing from him. I'm not a fan of his health though. I had to hit his head 67 times, which is 3 times more than necessary. And like Twin Bellows, the Centurions are useless again. The last levels go back to a vertical scroll, and I'll go ahead and say it. These levels are easier than the first 3 in the game. There's more areas where you need to make precise jumps and wait for moving platforms, but they lack the onslaught of monsters that the Underworld had, and the ones you do get to deal with have easier attack patterns to avoid. Throw in the health upgrades and power-ups you might have by this point, and these levels become very fair. The final fortress is the biggest one yet, and the boss you'll fight is Pandora. One word: pyrokinesis. How would you like to have that superpower? I mean, Pandora could play around the Himalayas for hours and she'd be perfectly fine. Also, her 0-degree ponytail makes her look like a Native American. I really love the fact that this boss makes me want to die. I only had to hit her 50 times, which is how much Twin Bellows took, but this time there's bubbles, we're gonna call them flames for the sake of comedy, bouncing around, and they're pretty annoying because Pandora likes to hide in the ceiling and go invisible all the time. But now we've finally made it to the palace in the sky. The sacred treasures we've acquired from the fortresses are a mirror shield, the arrow of light, and some Pegasus wings, and with these we can permanently take wing, kick Medusa's ass, and save wifey. The level is pretty different because it's an auto-scroller. Enemies are placed on the map very fairly, but eventually everything will loop back into itself. You need to kill 50 monsters before the map will load in the next room, which is the final boss fight. That's disgusting. Right away, the game wastes no time to flood the screen with things that'll hurt you. Medusa is constantly shooting rays out of her eye that track where you are, and snakes keep jumping out of her hair to attack. Talk about a bad hair day. Maybe if she gelled them into 3 big, very smooth arcs sticking out of her forehead, they wouldn't be scrambling all over the place. And I don't know if it's an oversight or the canonical way to beat Medusa, but if you position yourself in the center of the left side of the screen, you'll never get hit by any of her attacks. I also want to highlight this red effect that happens every time you hit her. Is this an edit to the game? Because it looks too good for the NES to run. And if it is, why was it added? I've read that some people had seizures from watching Kid Icarus, but I don't know what part of the game they were caused from. Imagine having a seizure because your grandchild is good at Kid Icarus, but once Medusa is defeated, a Medusa the size of an average human mother is found in her cornea and just falls over. And with that, we get to see the best ending. Shit! I wound up missing one of the arrows of strength, and what I got was the good ending, where waifu Palutena turns Pit into a man, which, that's a dream. But I need an even more immersive experience. I need the best ending. Luckily, the game has its own cheats. Kid Icarus was one of the first video games to introduce the password system. When you die, a password is shown on screen so you can continue where you left off the last time you were playing. Because of this system, you can type in codes you've never even seen and play, quote-unquote, someone else's file. That means I can type in a code that guarantees I'll get the best ending, but while trying out codes, I discovered that the passwords for the NES version are incompatible with the Wii and NES Classic versions, so I went out of my way to clear the game 3 more times to get the bad endings. In the worst ending, Pit becomes a farmer, which is honestly offensive. If I was in Pit's sandals, I would end it all right there. In the second ending, he becomes a soldier, and in the third ending, he becomes a high-ranked soldier, which are both still tragic downgrades from his role as the guy in charge of Palutena's personal bodyguards. And here's the best ending. Damn, I'm horny! So that's Kid Icarus, the worst game I like, and it's literally only because Kid Icarus Uprising exists. Honestly, I want a boxed copy of this game, and I don't even own a working NES. That's how messed up in the head I am. And disclaimer, I do not cum on figures of women I would simp for. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a like to help the channel grow and subscribe to get updates on my uploads as soon as they happen. But until then, I will see you all next time.